I've received apologies. I haven't received any apologies, have I? Oh. Sorry about that. I've received apologies from Councillor Madden, Councillor Joanne Cassidy, Councillor Leslie Spillard, Councillor Anne Arkle and Councillor Joan Walker. And Councillor Karen Bolger is expected to be delayed. Do we have any other apologies? No? Thank you. Can I remind members please to sign the relevant attendance sheet? Thank you. The Mayor now wishes to make a short statement. Madam Mayor?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've been asked by a number of our elected members on the recent press reports on Capita and how this might affect North Tyne services. And I think, as you recall, the council services were outsourced to Capita by the previous Mayor, Linda Arkley, and her Deputy Mayor, Councillor Judith Wallace, as part of a 15-year contract, and it was worth £152 million. So you can understand how concerned we are here in the council about how this is going to affect us. Councillors will have seen reports about the financial position of Capita plc in the media over the past 2 days. Capita Property and Infrastructure Limited is a subsidiary of Capita plc and provides property, engineering and regulatory services, including planning and licensing, to this council. Capita are contracted to provide those services until 2027. I have received a letter from Capita outlining their position and the proactive steps they are taking to address their current financial position. We have received assurances that there will be no disruption to service delivery to the public or the council. The Chief Executive and other senior officers on my behalf will continue, and of course your behalf, because it's part of your responsibility as well, to continue to monitor the situation closely. And of course, I will advise all members if there is any change to the current position. Thank you very much, Chair.
Now we move on to declarations of interest. The Head of Law and Governance has emailed all members to set out the position with regard to interest in the meetings for the Council that will deal with the budget proposals. In relation to registrable personal interest held where a member has been appointed by the authority to an outside body or bodies, dispensations have been granted to allow them to participate and vote in any meetings of the Council, Cabinet or any committees and subcommittees in relation to that registrable personal interest and their membership to that body. Where members have been granted such dispensations, they are not required to declare these registrable personal interest or grant any dispensations at this meeting. A list of appointments to the authorities, outside bodies and dispensations granted to members in respect of these appointments have been emailed to all members and copies have been circulated around the chamber. Any interests do we have?
Thank you, Chair. Although there can't see any financial figures in the report does mention NHS health checks, and I'm a director of Tyne Health who hold that contract currently. I also seemingly have a family member who is employed by the council.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you. I have non-registrable personal interest in business cases 2 and 22. I have a family member with special needs who is supported by the council.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Thank you. The purpose of tonight's meeting, the Council's Constitution sets out that its budget and policy framework procedure rules and the process for setting the council budget in a particular the council tax level. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to enable the Cabinet to submit to Council their proposals for estimates of amounts for the calculation of the budget, the council tax requirement for 2018-19. The General Fund revenue budget proposals on which these calculations will be based are submitted to Council in support of these estimates. The submission of the Cabinet's estimates for amounts for the 2018-19 General Fund revenue budget starts the Council's process of setting the council tax levels. The Cabinet's proposals are submitted to this meeting for the Council to receive, but will be formally moved and seconded as at a reconvened Council meeting on the 15th of February 2018. There is an opportunity for members to ask questions about the Cabinet's proposals at this meeting. Between the submission of the proposals up to this meeting and the consideration that will take place at the Council meeting on the 15th of February, members are able to submit objections to the Cabinet's proposals. Any objections received will be considered at the reconvened meeting on the 15th of February. Members are now in receipt of the report containing the Cabinet's proposals in relation to council tax requirement for 2018-19 General Fund revenue budget. Can I now ask Councillor Glindon, Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, to introduce the Cabinet's proposals?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm pleased to submit to Council Cabinet's two-year budget proposals for the years 2018 to 2020. As you all will be aware, we've been developing these budget proposals since the summer. At the time I presented the draft proposals to Cabinet on the 27th of November last year, we were still waiting for provisional settlement, and this meant the draft budget was based on a range of assumptions. Provisional settlement was issued on the 9th of December. Despite extensive lobbying and an effort to increase local government funding, there was no improvement in the provisional settlement. The main change was to increase the council tax referendum limit to 3%, thereby asking our taxpayers to plug the gap in resources. The financial challenges left Cabinet in a very difficult position with regard to options to prepare a balanced budget when bringing together the impact reduced funding over a number of years alongside additional unfunded burdens and demand-led pressures we have faced over the last few years. These proposals include an overall increase in council tax, as recommended by the central government, of 4.99%. This is made up of 3% of adult social care precept and a general increase of 1.99%. I'd like to point out that the adult social care precept does not meet the cost of additional burdens of a national living wage, costs associated with the funding pressures in the local health economy, as well as the extra costs associated with the needs of an ageing population. The cost of adult social care services already fall in the lower quartile against national benchmarks. So if we didn't implement the additional precept, cuts to service provision would be such that the authority would be at risk of being unable to deliver its statutory duties in relation to adult social care and put further pressures on vulnerable people and their families. In recognition of the ongoing financial challenges to be addressed, we have included contingencies of £1.8 million to support the management of adult social care costs. Council should also be aware of the sustained cost pressures we face in supporting and looking after children. Whilst government do intend to do some research into what is recognised by the most as a national issue, there is no provision of a settlement for funding to support this issue. We have recognised the risks we continue to face in this area and therefore include £2 million in contingencies for 18-19. We continue to face the challenge of maximising the use of limited resources to ensure that Borough continues to grow through investment and our essential services continue to be delivered. Achieving this balance grows more difficult every year, and we can see no easing of the relentless pressure to secure efficiencies in the current financial environment. We only have a 2-year settlement and currently are unclear what a proposed fair funding review and a move to greater business rate retention will mean to us for 2020 and 2021 and beyond, making it very challenging to financially plan beyond this current 2-year window. The budget and financial plan included here today sets out same proposals of over £10 million for 2018-19 and close to £32 million over the next 2 years. The key part of the financial planning process involves submitting what is known as the NNDR1 return to central government about the business rates for 18-19. We submitted the NNDR1 yesterday, so there will be a minor update on resources as part of the Mayor's Amendment letter, which will be issued when the remainder of the outstanding information is received in respect to some grants and some joint service budget. The report authorises the Mayor to make any final amendments arising from these in any other areas of outstanding information. Despite the challenges, we continue to focus on achieving the overall policy objective shaped by the updated Our North Tyneside plan. The same proposals set out here today will be delivered through Creating a Brighter Future programme. The authority will continue to change the way it operates. We will continue to look at making a difference for residents by making the council work smarter, continue to put people at the centre of what it does to ensure the organisation maximises how it uses public money to achieve residents' priorities, including delivering economic success and jobs for the borough. This year's budget engagement to date has included feedback on the proposals being sought through the council's website and through a range of focus groups with different stakeholders, including residents, staff, businesses and partner organisations. The outcome of the engagement so far is set out in Appendix E, the Cabinet report. Chair, I would like to thank for where we are at this moment in time, the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, all the Cabinet members and all officers for assistance in delivering this proposal that's laid before Council tonight. And can I ask that any technical questions that are asked we ask the officers to answer them. If they're not technical, we'll ask the Cabinet member to answer them. If they are unsure of the answer, I'll just ask for them to be done in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon. I'd now like to invite members to ask questions in relation to the Cabinet's council tax requirement and budget proposals. I will take questions on the report section by section and on each of the business cases in turn. The order in which the questions will be taken has been circulated around the chamber and is slightly different to the version that has been emailed to members, in that the questions on the business cases will be taken straight from questions on Appendix C to the report, which relates to the efficiency savings. Members are requested to identify the page numbers to which their question relates before asking the question. Following questions on the report and business cases, members will then be invited to ask any final questions which do not relate to any specific pages appearing in the papers for tonight's meeting. Members are requested to avoid asking repetitive or irrelevant questions, and questions, as Councillor Glendon has indicated, will be responded to verbally as far as possible at this meeting. However, if there is any questions of a technical nature that cannot be answered tonight, a written response will be provided to all members of the Council no later than close of play on Friday the 9th of February. Questions will be taken section by section, and the first section of questions were related to pages 3 to 11. Do we have any questions on that section of the report? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 5, in paragraph 1.5.3, it says that various delegations and authorizations were recommended to be agreed at Cabinet last week. Were they in fact agreed?
The whole report went through the Cabinet was agreed, so yes, they were agreed.
Since this is in the report to Council, Madam Chairman, I think that it ought to have been updated to make that clear. It's not the actual Cabinet, it's not the Cabinet report, it is the report that we're receiving today.
It actually is a Cabinet report because the Cabinet proposes that they are speaking, they're putting forward here tonight for the Council to ask questions on. They either agree or disagree.
This is a Cabinet proposal, yes.
Well, the report I'm looking at is item 3, Council report to Council, and I'm looking at page 5 of that. which says that the delegations were recommended to be agreed with Cabinet. And I'm asking whether they were agreed, because Cabinet has met by now, and I would have thought Cabinet met before this report was issued. I would have thought the report should have been up to date.
Councillor, if I can just clarify, the position is that this report was published on the same day that the council meeting took place, and therefore it indicates that these are the recommendations to Cabinet that night. I can confirm that the recommendations to Cabinet were agreed on that occasion.
Thank you.
Were they the only questions that you had on that section, Councillor Wallace? Do we have any other questions on that section? Right, we'll move on to pages 12 to 23, Cabinet Report, the 24th of January. Do you have any questions? Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gillinden has already alluded to this in his introduction, but it's page 12. I would just like some further amplification about government assumptions. And I'm just wanting to understand how much the government is expecting us to increase council tax and the additional tax for adult social care. And furthermore, I would just like to know what the financial impact would be if we didn't accept the government's assumptions in connection with levels of council tax increase.
Councillor O'Shea. Councillor Flip.
Thank you. With regard to the government's asking us to give us the option to do the precept, which was 3% and 3%, well, the last 2 years. We could put another 1% in next year, which could have put a 2% this year and 1% next year. But because we didn't get the amount of funding we needed, we decided to put 3% on this year. So next year, if they don't give us any money, we're even further behind. With regard to the council tax, it's always been, the original thing was 1.99%, and then the government over a few weeks ago said we would put up to 2.99%. We've went for the 1.98%, so all the government are doing is they're putting the burden of payment for services which should come through government on the council taxpayers. So the reason we've opted for the 1.99% is because of collection rate values. If we put up the 2.98%, we're not so sure that people are going to arrears over it. So what we said is, and it took a lot of discussions with different people, that we'd go for the 1.98%, which would help us, not as much as what it would if the government funded it properly, but it would also help the residents of the borough to try to keep down costs, because we know they're getting driven up to the 3% precept. And in the past, the councils of the government have given grants for council tax, so haven't had to put it up. So that was taken away a couple of years ago, which is why the last 2 years we've had these council tax rises. So I hope that answers your question, John.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. Do you have any other questions on that part of the report? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Cam. I'm wondering why this Cabinet report was published so late. I mean, the Cabinet met on the 24th at 6 o'clock, but the report wasn't published until about an hour beforehand. That's very little notice for members of the public. And I'm also wondering how much opportunity it gave the Cabinet for proper consideration of the report.
Mr. Linden?
I think that's for you give the report and so you publish the report, so.
No, I didn't.
The report was published as soon as it was fully available, following all consultation that was required with Cabinet members and other sign-off officers, and the report was complete, and it is not unusual for such reports, which are complex, require a lot of consideration and detailed analysis prior to publication, to actually provided quite late. Having said that, Cabinet members, clearly, these being Cabinet members' proposals, have been consulted throughout and are familiar with the elements of the report, and therefore there should have been no surprises at that point. It's always unfortunate when Cabinet papers are issued late, but on occasions it becomes necessary.
Thank you. I would like an assurance that this is not a trend, Chairman, because the ONS reports came out the day before the ONS committee
Can we
met.
keep? Yeah, I appreciate that. Can we keep to the actual cabinet report? I mean, we've had an explanation about why that was late, and it was unfortunate, but it does happen. But the cabinet were fully consulted throughout the process. Is that right? Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Madam Mayor?
I would just like to make it very clear, Chair, if that's all right, because we're talking about having why we have to put up the capital tax and why we're raising this, to be quite honest. I think it's really important for the public to understand how much has the reduction in central government funding been for North Tyneside in the last few years. And I'm not sure somebody can tell me that, because I know it's millions.
Since 2014, when local government finance moved to business rate retention, the Works of Settlement Fund and Assessment, which includes the Revenue Support Grant and our share of business rates on top of business rates, is just over £54 million, represents a 49% cut in funding. I do have a paper with the details if anybody wants. So, but at the end of the day, it's £54 million. That's since 13-14, since you became the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon. Wallace, this is another question on pages 12 to 23.
It is, yes. In paragraph 1.12 on page 12, it says that the government is recommending a 3% council tax increase. In fact, the government is actually giving an option, as Councillor Glendon referred to in his more recent remarks. Will the Cabinet member confirm that, please?
I don't see any difference in them two words, to be quite honest.
Oh, Chairman, there's a massive difference between recommending it and having an option.
I think we've just got to stick to questions that the Cabinet member has responded. Is there any other questions on those sections? Right, can we move on to pages 25 to 27, please? That's Annex 1, Introduction and Engagement Process. Councillor Barry, sorry, I was just got this in.
I have two questions to ask. Would the Mayor explain how the financial planning budget process was presented to the public for public consultation when the business cases were in pink paper?
Is that Councillor Burgess?
Yes, thank you. We have had a varied engagement process this year, and I mean, I think lots of members in this chamber acknowledge that it's very different to what it was last year, and we did say that we would continue to do that. In terms of the approach, we have done a wide approach, and we have gone over through into the newspapers, we have done the social media, so it's been extensive. I mean, I can go in deeper if you wish at this particular point in time. But yes, we are very pleased with the outcomes of that engagement.
Councillor Barry, do you have another question?
Yes, I have. Could you also tell me how many people attended the public face-to-face events and how many online responses there were in the website questionnaire?
Thank you. The online survey on the Council's website had 407 responses. That's totals in between November and now. The face-to-face contact that we had, we've had, well, the residents panel had 38 attendees over the 3 days.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Is that
Thank
your
you.
response?
Yes, that's the question.
Is that your questions, Councillor Barry? Thank you. Are there any other questions on that section? Can we move on? Can we move on to pages 28 to 32, the Annex 1R North Tyneside Plan? Do we have any questions on that section? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. The figures on pages 29 and 30 show a dramatically improving and very welcome economic position, and of course unemployment is continuing to fall. Why on page 33, therefore, is this just described as some economic growth? Isn't it in fact dramatic economic growth coming from government policies?
Are you referring to page 33?
I'm starting with pages 29 and 30, Chairman, which I think is the section that we're on at the moment.
Right.
Which refers, for example, to a wider reduction in the number of people claiming unemployment benefits, the reduction in the number of 18 to 24-year-olds looking for jobs, the increased number in businesses, the increased number of jobs in the borough, more businesses, etc. And I'm suggesting that that is in fact dramatic economic growth rather than just described as it is on page 33 as while we're experiencing some economic growth.
That might be a context. Would you like to respond, Councillor Pickard?
Yes, certainly. I think if you look at the economic growth in context amongst all the rest of the North East councils, we stick out quite well. Therefore, we know fine well that the economy is in a bit of a downward trend nationally, but this goes down to the hard work and the investment and the work that we've done over the years in North Tyneside to, one, despite cuts in the business support grant, for us to be able to finance that through the European Parliament, which is we're worried about whether we can continue with that money in the future following Brexit, and the work that the officers have done in North Tyneside, particularly in the business support unit, going out there, talking to existing businesses, and a lot of the growth has been them deciding to move further offices up to the North East. So in fact, that it's nothing to do with the national trend, which is on a downward trace. It's not even anything to do with the North East trend. It's down purely to the hard work and determination of the officers in North Tyneside.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Yeah.
Clearly, the national economic big picture is actually quite different. It's growing, as indeed we're growing here. But I do have another question. On page 32, please, Chairman. It refers to proposals for new business rates pilots.
I'm following this, it says here 28 to 32 first.
Yes, well, I'm on page 32.
Okay.
Page 32, Chairman, yes? Page 32 refers to proposals for new business rates pilots, which have been approved in some areas. Did the council apply to take part in those business rates pilots?
I'm going to say from memory, yes we did, and we weren't accepted. But I'll look at the 151 officer for clarification on that. But I can't say I can't, no. No. We didn't apply. No, we didn't apply, sorry.
So the cabinet member didn't know that we didn't apply? Okay, well, why did we not apply, Chairman?
Can I just say that there will be questions? Can I just ask you? Thank you, because we're getting feedback. Sorry, Councillor. Can I just say that the cabinet member can refer if it's a technical question. They won't know everything, and that there will be askings from the officers, and we will. That's what we agreed at the beginning of the meeting. Okay.
Could I ask?
Can I just say that I was going to try and answer on that? As far as we were aware, the few that were done were with combined authorities where they'd agreed a mayoral selection. It then moved to other combined authorities, and at that time, I believe it was Liverpool and some of the others moved forward. So we'll double check the criteria, but I was pretty sure the criteria was you had to be a mayoral authority to actually undertake this. So you got the allocation of the business rates down to your authority on 100%. But we'll double check that and do it in writing. But I think it was the government's criteria that stopped us applying.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard.
I think that would merit looking into again, because my understanding, Chairman, is that 22 applications have been received and half of those have been agreed, and I think that's a missed opportunity for this authority. would not have been better given that the government...
Can we just stick to questions, please? The cabinet member has responded. It looks like we missed on the criteria, but we will get that in writing, like he has said. Okay? Could you turn off your speaker as well, please, Councillor Watts? Thank you. Do we have any other questions then on the pages 28 to 32, Annex 1, North Tyneside Plan? Councillor Early.
Yes, two-part question just in relation to general fund on page 32. How much will the council tax raise and why have we seen such increases in council tax over the last few years?
The 4.98% increase will raise £4,279,208. This over £2.5 million relates to 3% towards adult social care. The second part was about the council tax increase over the last few years. I think I answered that before, but we were given the grants from the council, from the government, to keep the council tax increase to zero. And when they took it away, obviously, well, we couldn't contain movement in our services without having to put a charge back onto the council taxpayer. So what I said before, and I'll say it again, everybody knows it. We'll all try to get out of it, but you know what the government are doing is that they're actually not giving us money and asking the public to pay for charges which were previously paid for by government. So you know, that's it.
Councillor Pickard.
Could I just make a point of clarification, because on the note we got from yourself, you said that we're doing pages 20 to 32, our North Tyneside plan. That's why I raised the question 32 before I answered, because clearly the other one's from 32 as well, so it's only the top 3 paragraphs that are concerned with the local plan. The question we got was on the general funds, that's why I queried why I was getting the general fund question.
Okay.
So are we now on to the general fund 32 to 39?
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's overspilled to the 32. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Pickard. We'll move on.
Sorry, Chair.
Is that going to be?
I'm one step ahead of you, I think.
Our North Tyneside plan, because we've got.
Yeah, are we on 32, 39 now?
That's what I was going to move on to.
Yeah.
Is that where you're going to have your question to? Right, okay. Is there any other questions on 28, 32, but not the general fund part? No, right. Okay, right, we'll move on to pages 32 to 39. And I'll take your question now, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. On page 35, in the third paragraph, it says the government introduced a new check, challenge and appeal process with regard to the business rate appeals. So all of a sudden we've got £2 million of resources to be put in the authority's budget for 2018-19. We understand that that flatlined in previous years. I don't think our group was informed, I don't think we were notified about this in the budget briefings. Could I ask if this is backdated to the date of appeals and would it affect the figures of 2017, 2018 or even earlier, please, Chair?
Councillor Clint?
Well, that's the opposite answer, that, Chair.
Did you want that? Is that a technical question? Want that put in writing? Would you like that in writing?
I'll put it in writing, yeah.
Yes, okay. We'll have that response in writing, Councillor Mason. Sorry. I'm looking at you and I forgot. Councillor Dark, sorry. I
have a couple of questions, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dark.
It's okay. Have a forgettable face.
Yeah.
Could I ask?
Sorry, you haven't.
Could I ask how much has been saved in efficiencies since 2010?
Since 2010, we've over £210 million has been planned to be delivered. In the last 4 years, in excess of 65 million. And saved estimates since 2014-15, which was our first budget, just over 2.67 million has not been delivered. So in effect, since 2010, 110 million.
Thank you. I have another question.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett.
Yes, please. And what are the main cost pressures and underfunded growth, please? Unfunded growth, sorry.
I think I mentioned some of these in my speech. I mentioned some of these in my speeches. The living wage was 3 million. Takes us to over 9 million since 16-17. Specific grant reductions such as the new home bonus, which has dropped by 3.2 million. Learning disability growth, which has dropped by 0.9 million. Adults and children's demand the unit costs of 3.8 million, which we've put in contingency anyway. So they are the main unfunded growth cost pressures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon. Councillor Waggett-Fairley?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm on pages 33 and 34. The Cabinet Member for Finance has actually answered some of them, but I would like the respective Cabinet Members for Children's Services and Adult Social Care to answer what the main funding pressures are on those portfolios, please.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Bell's kindly let me go first. Thank you for the question. The main pressures in children's services remain mainly within corporate parenting and placements. Although we continue to be a strong performer compared to our regional neighbours and the national picture, the children we are supporting have complex needs that are expensive to meet. Nationally, there has been an increase in demand for children's residential placements, but with no corresponding increase in funding. Locally, placements for adolescents, particularly males, with a combination of risks including aggressive behaviour, offending, substance use and sexualised behaviour are increasingly difficult to source. This has resulted in local authorities having to use more costly bespoke solo placements where it is not suitable to place young people in group environments. Some 70% of local authorities are overspent in children's services, and the government have recognised some of the cost pressures in adult services and allowed us to set a preset. However, they have failed to respond to the request from children's services across the country about doing something similar with regard to children's services, so they've not responded in any way to the pressures that we're facing in children's services because of the reasons I've outlined in the answer, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grayson. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Chair. The answer to the question in a nutshell is funding, but and that was the answer. The £2.8 billion gap in 2019-2020 in adult social care nationally. We've got the rising costs for supporting residents with learning disability who live in supported living, home care for elder residents, and obviously a national living wage. But we also, these are mitigating factors. But however, we are trying to be positive as well under these harsh financial restraints on prevention and well-being. We're focused on delivering quality services, and prevention enables people to stay at home and stay healthier and stay independent. And with the well-being policy we're going to introduce, the Care and Connect and others, we plan to give the best quality service we can to our residents under immense financial pressures recognised by the whole sector, including government as well. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's going to have to be some sort of commission at the end of the day. Find out how we get rid of this funding gap, but it's not going to go away if we just carry on the current politics. So, as a cabinet member for adult social care, and with my members and officers and the staff who work for the council do a fabulous job, we will carry on delivering quality services under severe financial restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor McIntyre, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Page 34, paragraph 6, the last sentence. The final decision on the council tax support scheme is responsibility of full council, and the scheme for 2018-19 will be considered at the council meeting on the 18th of January 2018. Why has the report not been updated? It seems a bit slacked out.
An observation?
No, it's not an observation, it's a question. Why it's not been updated if you read the last sentence on paragraph 6?
Can you just read it again, Boris, if you don't mind?
The final decision on the council tax support scheme is the responsibility of full council, and the scheme for 2018-19 will be considered at the council meeting on the 18th of January 2018. We're past that date.
Well, you're aware because you were part of the decision and you agreed that it go ahead. It's obviously an error within the report. We'll get that put right.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Glendon. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. On page 35, it refers to the business rates and the revaluation, etc., and the top-up grant to ensure that the council is no worse off as a result of the revaluation. And it says further down that the current amount of compensation through the Section 31 grant is almost £1 million, £968,000. Yet on page 66 in Appendix B, it says that it's £1.273 million. Which is the correct figure, please, Chairman?
So I'll ask Janice, the 151, I was answer that. I do know. In writing.
That'll be response in writing. Thank you, Councillor Glendon.
So, following on from that, then is the amount that we're actually getting in extra in business rates 3.273 million rather than 2 million?
That's going to be a response in writing, Councillor Wallace.
That will be covered in the reply meeting. Distributed every council member as well.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon.
Yeah, in the past we've normally had a place for officers to stand up and give their answers. I say that's not here tonight. I don't know the reason why, because obviously if members from all parties want an answer, they want it there and then, not to be given in writing at a later date. So.
Have we not got a mic set up? There's a hand mic that can be used as the officers here to respond to some of the technical questions. Is the officers here to respond to the technical questions? I'll be able to. We've got Janice is here. We'll do it. So we'll get a mic, and then when we hit upon any questions that need a technical response, we'll ask the officers if they can. But there will be times when it will have to be given a written response. Right.
Thank you, Chair. So in respect of the Section 31 grant, is that what we're talking about at the moment? The Section 31 grant is made up of a number of compensation elements. So the 1.2 million is in an overall total for a number of different compensation elements, which includes the compensation for the RPI and CPI change, so I can provide an analysis in total on that change. I don't have it with me here tonight, but I can provide a written analysis of the total reconciliation.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. On page 36 in Table 1, can the Cabinet Member clarify why the council tax is going up from 84.5 million to 89.9 million, which is more than a 4.99% rise?
Yeah, what people have got to understand is that these are assumptions. 1819 is where we are now. It's an estimate is on it. This budget, this reported budget, is as it stands today, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen in the year 1920. We've got to make assumptions on it. So some of it applies to new homes bonus, which may come in. We don't know what. We're making an assumption that it might come in. So. Not new homes, but it's new homes being built, sorry. We made assumptions on that, on new homes being built. So So the increase would be due to new homes being built within the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon. Is that have you another question, Councillor?
I do, yes. So the new homes, the assumption there is about £600,000 from new homes. That's what the cabinet member's saying, because the figures he's just given us were 4.27 million, I think he said, for the rise in council tax. We've got an extra 600,000 or so, haven't we? So that's accounted for by new homes. I'm just making sure I've understood that correctly, Chairman.
No, it's if you're talking about the difference between 1718 and 1890, is that what you're talking about? Right. 1718, 1819 is, we all build new homes within that. And it's just an assumption being made on how many we should do throughout, how much money income we should get throughout the borough. If you want a further breakdown of that, I'll ask the 151 officer to give you
Thank you, Chairman. I think that would be helpful, because we've heard that the proposed council tax rise of 85% will bring in 4.27 million, but as Councillor Clinton's just said, yeah, between 17-18 and next year, which is what we're looking at 5.5 million. So that's what I'm trying to understand. So the assumption is new houses, is it? Right.
Well,
that accounts for 1.3 million.
The cabinet member has responded.
Chair, can I get the 151 officer to respond to this, please?
Okay. The officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. The 89.9 million includes assumptions on growth in the council tax base, as well as the 4.99% increase in council tax. So it's the cumulative effect of growth in the council tax base and a council tax increase.
Thank you for that. Have we another question?
I have several questions, Chairman. Thank you. I wonder, I'm expecting that this will have to be circulated, if we could have the expected figure for council tax for properties in each band across the borough, please.
We will get that circulated, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon.
Thank you. Just going back to the increasing figures in council tax, can we similarly have an explanation for the rise between 1819 and 1920 of 283,000, which is a very big drop on the previous increase?
Thank you. Officers, is the officer going to respond?
In this table for 1920s, it's purely an assumption on growth in the council tax base. There is no assumption of council tax increases for 1920 at this point in time.
Thank you.
So can I clarify, please, Chairman? We're assuming the council tax base growth will produce around £280,000, yes? And yet we're assuming growth elsewhere in the report of around 790 homes per year. So 790 homes per year should produce an awful lot more than £283,000 in council tax, shouldn't it?
I think the officer's answered that. Do you want to clarify your answer again?
It very much depends on the band A equivalents that we build into the growth assumptions. So we can provide an analysis of the overall average increases that we anticipate from 750 homes across the borough, and how that translates into average band A equivalents in arriving at the assumptions for growth.
Thank you.
Can I just ask the officer to confirm what's a band D figure? What band D figure is being used? What amount?
I think we're getting repetitive questions now. I think we just have to. The officer's responded, and we'll just leave that for now about the technical questions. I'm sure we provided that information. Right.
Okay. The point I'm making is I think it's very unclear as to what
I think
the
they were
increases in
provided at the
income
last council meeting as well, the papers with the council bands on. Right, so we up on the general fund.
Yeah, I've got several questions, Chairman, thank you. Where is the new homes bonus figure shown in this section of the report, or in this report? The amounts of bonus which the council is receiving or expected to receive next year?
They're on page 37, Under the second paragraph, the homes bonus £793,000.
Thank you, Councillor Glynn. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. In table 1 again, could we have an explanation of the collection fund surplus, please? The figures that are there, the 370,000 for this year and 400,000 for next year, how that's calculated, please.
Collection fund surplus is monies that weren't collected in previous years, I think, and they've come into this year's accounts, you know, next year's accounts, extra money, including growth on extra houses built.
Thank you, Councillor Glynn.
And can the Cabinet member tell me, or the officer, what the assumptions are for the fire and police precepts, please?
Nobody knows that until she announces it.
The Cabinet members referred in his speech to the NNDR1 return, which was completed yesterday. So could the officer tell us what exactly the amendment is to the figures, please? Or perhaps the Cabinet member could.
I didn't ask the 151 to answer that for us.
Chair, I'd like to confirm in writing, but I think it's something in the region of about £6,000 difference.
Thank you for that. Do you have a question, Councillor Wallace?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The totals on the bottom of table 1, although we're being told funding's reducing, we're actually seeing a rise in the council budget here. That's right?
That's correct.
It's not a cut, it's a rise.
It's a rise until 1920 and it starts reducing again.
And then looking at the figures, we seem to have about an extra £10 million in resources since the end of November. Is that right?
I don't see where you make that from, Nick.
I'm looking at the rise in the council tax figures you've given, the business rates, for example. I understand an increase in interest as well, which have come to almost £10 million.
Well, if you're looking at the bottom line, there's no increase in £10 million on the bottom line.
Ken?
In terms of the resources that we've heard about, it equates to about £10 million.
Well, I think we've got to look at the table, Councillor Wallace, and it does say that it stays relatively the same. We can have, is there...
Page 37, Chair, at the foot of the page, the efficiency requirement is described as £31.5 million. Why did the council tweet just a couple of weeks ago that it was £37 million?
Basically because we've done some work on it in the meantime, so... latest of information from the government.
So in a couple of weeks it's fallen by £5 million.
Well, I think that the Cabinet members said if they've had further clarification on the figures.
How does that fit in with the £41 million on page 16 of the report to Council, Chairman?
£41 million over 2 years.
Is the £31 million not over 2 years as well?
Well, it's all included. It was £10 million this year, £31 million next year. Or £32 million next year, if my memory's correct.
Well, at the foot of page 37, Chairman, it says £31 million to the end of 1920.
Does the officer want to come in? Please?
What I'm asking, Chairman, really is how can we rely on these figures when we seem to be lurching about...
I think that it is, at times, can be quite fluid. I've got Councillor Allen.
Chair, I just want to draw a point. I can't follow what Councillor Wallace is referring to. It's not, she's not saying which paragraph.
Right, okay,
so
thank you.
it's very difficult to understand what the point she's
All
making.
right, okay, fair point, Councillor Allen. Can you refer to the paragraphs, Councillor Wallace? I think we're going to have a response from the officer first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the November report to Cabinet, £37 million of efficiencies or the gap was quoted, and that was before the assumptions around council tax increases or completion of the NNDR1. So the majority of the change from the 37 million down to the 31 million are based on the assumption that the council tax increase is now reflected in Cabinet's draft proposals now, and the NNDR1 has been updated such that there's an additional 2 million resource available there. So that forms the majority of the movement from the November report through to the January report. 41 million is the position that Cabinet started with at the beginning of that planning process.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Can I ask you just to turn your microphone off?
Before I do, Chair, can I just say that Councillor Wallace has just said that you can't trust the figures in the report. The figures in this report have been given to us by officers or professional people, and you know, that's their job. And if we can't trust them, we can't trust nobody.
I'm asking, Chairman, how we could rely on them when we seem to have various different figures.
Well, I think the officers clarified the issue of what's been happening, and you know that they are trying to get them up to date as quickly as possible, and it is very time pressured, and I think they've done a really good job actually.
I'm grateful for the clarification. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just ask, because I know we're in dire trouble to get the support we need for our vulnerable young children, our elderly, but I'm looking at that table, General Fund Financial Plan Resources, and I'm looking at revenue support grants. And one of the reasons we're having to put up the taxes because the government's reducing our revenue support grant over the next 2 years by over 10 million. So let's be fair about this. Most of the things we're having to do is what, because the government's not...
Chair, I thought it was meant to be questions.
Yes, can I just say, listen, can we just make these questions, not statements? We need to get through a lot of business tonight, so can we just have specific questions, not repetitive questions? And there will be times when the officers will be asked to reply, and there will be other times when we have to have the answers in writing. So now we've spent a lot of time on this section, and we just ask if there's any other questions apart from what's been already said, please. And Madam Mayor.
Can I just point out the question? It was a question to Councillor Clinton. I asked if that was one of the reasons, because of the reduction in revenue support grant, that we're having to increase the council tax. Is that one of the reasons, Councillor Clinton?
Yes, Jay, you're completely right. It's dropped from 22 down to 11. It's actually half the revenue support grant. And that's in 17, 18. And it's going down to 0.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clinton. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can you make this your last question, please, on this section, because we do have a lot to go.
No, I've got several other questions, Chairman, I'm afraid, on different points within this section.
Have some of them in writing, because we're going to...
Chairman, no, I don't think that's fair. This is the opportunity to ask these questions.
No,
and
okay then, but can we make sure that the questions that we're not labouring on one point, that you clarify and maybe make the question to encompass the same point? Thank you.
Well, this is an entirely different point, Chairman. On page 37, in the second last paragraph, it says the £3.8 million included within the contingency budget. Can the Cabinet member tell me what the total contingency budget is, please?
I said that in my speech. It's £2.2 million for adult social care and 1.8 for children's. Or the other way around.
The other way around.
The other way around. There's Ian jumping in for his money.
Also on page 37, Chairman, please, the second bullet point refers to a 2% pay increase of 1.569. Yet, in our briefing, and followed by an email, the Head of Finance told me that was 1%. Was £700,000. Can we confirm what the exact figure is, please?
Do you want to respond to that? Janice, are you responding to that, Janice?
Thank you, Chair. It's not a straight doubling up of the 1% to the 2% because there are some banding changes within the current proposal put forward.
Thank you.
Can I clarify also, please, in the last bullet point on page 37, it refers to the absorption of payroll inflation, £1 million. What does that mean, please? Is that not included?
Can you clarify what paragraph that was?
It is the final bullet point
Right.
on page 37. Corporate pressures, next line down, the absorption of payroll inflation.
Chair, that's referencing a current year efficiency business case around services looking to absorb the PM pension increase during 17-18, which in the current monitoring report is not being achieved, therefore we reflected it as growth in 18-19.
Thank you for that. Do you have the next question, Councillor Wallace?
On page 39, Chairman, it's described as the efficiency savings table over 2 years. How can this really be described as a 2-year plan when it's showing 19, almost £20 million have yet to be identified in 1920? We've had reference to 2-year settlements. It doesn't look as though this is really a 2-year plan.
Yeah, they're all assumptions. I mean, the settlement for 1920, we don't know what it's going to be anyway. But the government asked for it to go to a 2-year plan. So you've got to make some assumptions, and that's what these are.
Thank you, Councillor Glindon. Councillor Wallace? Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Do we have any other questions on that section? Okay. We'll move on to pages 40 to 41, Annex 1, Dedicated Schools Grant. Do you have any questions on that section of the report, Councillor McIntyre?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask how much does the council or the schools get in pupil premium this year in 2018-19?
Respond, Councillor Grayson.
I think we've answered that question before in council, haven't we? And I didn't think I knew the exact amount then either, so I think I've replied. Yeah, I think it has been asked before and I've circulated, but I will do it again.
Okay.
So, whatever it is, it's all extra money on top of the dedicated schools grant?
Pupil premium and dedicated schools grant is money that goes direct into schools. We don't have any say over what happens to it. It's all done by formula, the government formula, and goes direct to schools. That's why it's called dedicated schools grant. And pupil premium goes to schools on the criteria of the pupils who benefit from that and get that, or are eligible to get funded through that.
I'm just clarifying that it's extra money.
I think it's no. I think the cabinet member has actually responded. It isn't extra money. It actually goes straight to the school. Okay. Do we have any other questions? No. Right, can we move on to Annex pages 42 to 45? Annex 1, Cabinet's draft budget proposals for the 2018-2021 investment plan. Do we have any questions? Councillor McMullen? Further away, sorry. I'll have to get my glasses on, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I've spoken to a number of residents in my ward, Wallsend, about the success of the Mayor's Regeneration Plan. How will this budget support the regeneration plans?
Councillor Pickard?
Sorry, Chair, could the councillor just tell us which page number that refers to, please?
Sorry, could you?
42 to 45.
42. Page 42.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there have been many comments about the success of the regeneration programme, particularly in Wallsend and in Whitley Bay. Many residents are feeling really that work is now being done rather than being said to be done. It's actually been carried out and done. In the investment programme, we continue to invest and make sure resources are to finish the coastal regeneration, to finish the Swan Hunters redevelopment, looking at the St Mary's Lighthouse Visitor Centre once we get the planning permission right, but including that also is the Mayor's commitment to regenerate areas other than just Wallsend and the coast, and including there's a new scheme for the regeneration of Forest Hall, where we look forward to working with ward councils and residents for further investment in that particular area. Overall, the investment plan makes sure that we can continue with the good success we've received so far.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Do we have any other
Chair,
questions?
just my second question, please.
Sorry, you're having a second question,
Yes.
sorry.
Thank you,
Sorry,
thank you, Chair.
Councillor
Does the budget impact on the Mayor's commitment to invest in footpaths?
Councillor Harrison.
Well, certainly not. It's one of the Mayor's key priorities, and there's 10 million, sorry, 2 million in these plans for that to actually continue on.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any other questions on that section? Thank you. Then we move on to pages 46 to 54, Annex 1, 2018-19, Treasury Management Statement and Annual Investment Strategy. Do we have any questions on this part of the proposals? No? Next is pages 55 to 56, Annex 1, Response to the Overview, Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee recommendations. No questions? Pages 57 to 59, Annex 120, Statement by the Chief Finance Officer. Do we have any questions on that section? Question. Pages 60 to 63, Annex 1, Overall Financial Risk Assessment. Any questions? Pages 64 to 65, Appendix A, 2018-2020 R North Tyneside Plan. No. Pages 66 to 80, Appendix B, Breakdown of Financial Plan Cost Pressures 2018 to 19 to 2019-20. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. Page 68. The Education Services Grant. Can I ask the Cabinet Member, has this been cut again by the government?
Yeah, obviously this is a year-on-year cut that the government continue to make, and they're actually decimating the Education Services Grant, and as you can see in the report, there's another 778,000, so £750,000 cut to the Education Services Grant. So despite what some people think about government funding increasing for education, we clearly once again are seeing a cut from government to education services in this authority. And if we look at the minutes of last budget meeting last year and the budget meeting before that, we will see year-on-year cuts to the education services grant that has been decimated by this government.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 66, potential future pressures, contingencies, it says £2.925 million. I've just been asking about this earlier on when the figure given was 3.8 million. Can the Cabinet Member explain why there's such a difference in the figures? Which one is correct, please?
Ask the 151 officer. He's already there.
I think, did the officer respond? Councillor Clinton, are you going to respond to the officer? Okay.
Chair, thank you. What Appendix D does is shows the movement in the budget. So the 2.925 is the overall movement in year, which results in an overall position of 3.8 million being in the base budget for 18-19. But I'm happy to provide a reconciliation that shows that.
I think that will be helpful, Chairman, because the 2.95 is repeated on page 76 as well as being the contingency.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Wallace?
Not on this section, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, up to page 60 to 63, Annex 1, overall financial risk assessment. Have we done that one, have we? Sorry, that was my fault. I've missed it. Pages 81 to 82, Appendix C, efficiency savings, 2018-19. Councillor Burdis? Brian Burdis up.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions to the Cabinet Member or to the Mayor. First one, how much has the government cut the council weekly collection grant year by year? Second question, I don't know if you want to take the 3. Take 3. Nationally, how many councils still maintain weekly collection, and what is the provision by other North East councils? And the third and last question is, what if someone has a genuine need for more frequent collection or a larger bin?
Councillor Sterling, do you want to respond?
Yeah, on the first part of the question, how much should the government cut the weekly bin collection grant year by year? In 2012, North Tyneside were awarded a grant of 3.355 million by the Department of Communities and Local Government to support weekly waste collections. The grant ended in 2017. I think it equates, if you look at that way, it equates to £680,000 per year. Nationally, how many councils still maintain weekly collection? No other councils in Tyne and Weir region still carry out weekly collections. Alternate weekly collections have been successfully implemented in more than 70% of authorities across the country, which has led to an increase in recycling rates and a decrease in waste overall. And thirdly, what if someone has a genuine need for a larger bin? All premises are currently being assessed for inclusion in alternate weekly collection programme. However, there may be some properties that require a different method of collection, and an individual assessment will be carried out in these premises. We will also continue to support residents who have specific additional needs. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Councillor Linda Bell?
Can you tell me how this budget helps address the excessive demand in adult social care?
Is it Councillor Bell? Councillor Gary Bell, sorry.
Junior. Yes.
Councillor Sterling, could you turn your mic off, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes, including the budget is additional funding to recognise the increased costs and support of residents with underpinnings, which I alluded to earlier. Increased costs associated with the impact of living wage, which impacts directly on our service providers. The contingent provision is for myself or for the department is 1.8 million, which is down to good stewardship by the cabinet member and the officers. And this is in recognition of range of risk associated with delivery. We have got 1.8 million in a contingency, but at the moment we're in dispute with the CCG for 1.2 million reference mental health funding, which has been escalated by the Chief Executive. So there's constant pressures on the budget. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
One more question, that says, and how does the budget help vulnerable adults?
Thank you. This year's budget is focused on allowing residents to live in good health in their own homes for as long as possible. The people wellbeing case is an innovative approach to its well-being, and well-being is a word which we'll say is a corporate word which becomes more effective in the council, affecting all services. Well-being is a major part in prevention, and also with the new hubs proposed, this will allow our residents and our vulnerable residents to seek support as well. All our proposals protect the council's legal duties for supporting vulnerable adults. I must emphasise that. All the proposals protect the council's legal duties for supporting vulnerable adults. In addition, the budget has given a clear focus on supporting those who may not be eligible for social care support, but may still be at risk at harm or abuse. So we're putting in a safety net for them as well. So we're looking after them. Our new MyCare website and integrated front door provide accessible and robust assistance to support all vulnerable residents. And kind of just again once emphasise that we have not barked on these proposed budget cuts lately. every cut is a human being, it's a person, it's a family. And I'd like to again thank the officers and the staff who deliver excellent services in North Tyneside. And I'm really proud of this administration's record, and we're going to keep on doing what we have to do and protect our most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor McMeekin, I'll get that right in a minute.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to page 82, I've got 2 questions. With reference to the efficiency savings to protect and develop North Tyneside's cultural offer, will the Council work with local volunteers who want to be involved in supporting their local library?
Councillor Dart.
Thank you, Chair. We're always happy to work with local volunteers who want to support their local library. This is part of our library strategy, and we look forward to continued support of our local communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secondly, will any new library opening hours mean that some branches will have less access due to the impact of bank holidays?
We are looking to minimise the impact of bank holidays by having less branches open on a Monday. We're just looking at the detail at the moment as part of the restructuring consultation. The commitment will still be for the CFCs to be open 5.5 days and branches 2.5 days.
Thank you, Councillor Dart. Councillor Linda Dart.
Got it right this time. Thank you. Could the Cabinet member tell me the last time it was proposed to close branch libraries, please?
There were plans under the previous Tory Mayor to carry out closures of branch libraries under the famous rolling review, which was stopped when Norman Redfern was elected in 2013, and we continue to support our branch libraries.
I have another question. Thank you. Since 2010, hundreds of libraries have closed across the country. How many libraries have actually closed in North Tyneside?
In September 2012, again under the Tory Mayor, George Westwater was the Cabinet member and Judith Wallace was the Deputy Mayor, the Course Road Library closed.
Councillor Clark. Karen Clark.
Thank you, Chair. We all know there's excessive demand pressures in children's social care. I'm just wondering, how will this budget help address that excessive demand?
Councillor Grayson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. The service continues to improve in the way it assesses and reviews the need for all placements, including regular review of all high-cost placements and the level of support required. As a result of this, the service has been successful in the last year in reducing both the number of children who are looked after and the numbers on child protection plans. This budget will enable the service to continue to drill down on those expensive placements whilst at the same time ensure the most complex young people receive the high quality interventions they require as outlined in the new model to support children business case in 17-18, which continues into 18-19. Key to managing demand is to have effective gatekeeping arrangements, and the introduction of the multi-agency safeguard hub, known as the MASH, in September last year is enabling us with our partners to ensure only cases that require a safeguarding response receive one, with other cases being managed by our early help services including Care and Connect and locality teams. In addition, and as a result of the successful offset inspection last year, we are, as part of the People and Wellbeing business case, looking to develop a new edge of care service which will further help the service manage and reduce demand.
Thank you, Councillor Grayson. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring back to my colleague Councillor Burns' point on the refuse collection and so forth. How will the proposed change to this? How will this help recycling? Either Councillor Sterling or Councillor Bloom.
Moving to alternate weekly collections reflects residents' priorities to do more recycling and send less waste to landfill. Alternate weekly collection works positively by increasing awareness of the waste that we throw away and the different ways to deal with it. This not only leads to a reduction in waste being put in the residual waste bins, but increases the amount of waste recycled. Where councils around the area went to the fortnightly bin collection, or alternate weekly bin collection, there's been an 18 to 21% rise in the recycling in them councils.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of other questions,
All
if
right.
that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. In between the questions, would you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you.
Just a couple of other questions, sorry. What are the costs of disposal between recycling and landfill?
Well, the answer to that is rather substantial. The problem is at the moment that we haven't got enough capacity and some of our waste has got to go in the landfill. I wish there was none going in landfill because that's the way we damage our planet. And we've got to think what we'll leave for the generation coming on. And with that in mind, I'm trying to reduce landfill as much as possible. Each household produces 1 tonne of waste per year. The cost to dispose of waste via landfill is £122 per tonne. The cost of recycling is 31 pence a tonne, so you can see there's quite a saving there. If we can recycle it instead of putting it in the landfill, there's quite a saving there. All that cost can fluctuate due to certain things that happen, such as the Chinese refusing to take plastics in now and stuff like that, so it's a movable piece.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just one final point, one final question. Are there any plans to charge for garden waste collection?
At this moment, there are no plans at all to charge for garden waste.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Councillor Frank Lott, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like, with your permission, to return to libraries, even though my last visit cost me 45 pence and fines. How does our library provision compare to that offered by other authorities, please?
It is estimated that more than 380 libraries have closed since 2010-11, and libraries run by volunteers has increased from less than 10 to 500 in the same period. Many authorities are considering alternative delivery models such as trust and neutrals. North Tyneside is in such a much better position than other authorities in terms of investments made into libraries and the decisions to retain a network of directly managed libraries across the borough.
Second question, Chair, and then I've got one more to finish off, if that's all right. How will these budget proposals impact upon the delivery of the library service in North Tyneside? It's actually been put to me by one or two residents that we're talking about closing libraries. Can we have an assurance that's not the case?
Yes, you have that insurance, Councillor. Our branch libraries are important to the local communities, so we have protected them as far as the budget allows. And in all, 10 branch libraries will remain open 2.5 days a week. For some, this will mean very little change. In others, much larger hours reduction. The libraries and customer first services will have a slightly changes in hours. In addition, there will be no changes to school library, the children's bus, the mobile library offer, or the libraries at home service, all of which target either young or most vulnerable. To summarise, the following changes in North Tyneside, we will still have 4 customer first centres open 5.5 days a week, 10 branch libraries open 2.5 days a week, school library service, a mobile library service and a children's library service, and a programme of events with high profile authors. We will, well within our legal duty to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service.
Thanks, Chair. I find that very reassuring. Just out of curiosity, I'll be happy to receive the answer in writing. How many visits were made to our branch libraries during the last year, please?
Well, if you've got to go pay a fine, will be one less next year, won't it? Out of 1.6 million visits to libraries, 281,610 were from branch libraries, which was 16%.
Doc. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question in relation to young people leaving care. I'm just curious to know, how is this budget going to help our young people leaving care and prepare them for adulthood?
Chair,
Yeah, thank you.
which page is this, please?
That's page 81. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously, this budget is a continuation of the theme and initiatives from last year, and as a result, we have established 2 new residential settings in the borough to help young people in their transition to independence. These are both delivered in-house by our children's residential services. Elm House is a new 6-bed unit on the Riverside site in North Shields that provides supported accommodation for young people leaving care. Mitford Gardens in Howden is a development of 5 flats, each 2-bed, for young care leavers who will benefit from a trainer flat as part of a pathway to independence and their own tenancy. Both settings have just opened in recent weeks, and so far a total of 6 young people have moved in, with others planned to move in by the end of March. The new service will make a real difference to the lives of young people in care and in supporting their transition to adulthood, as well as ensuring better outcomes. By growing our own residential provision, we will also reduce expenditure on external placements in private and the independent sector. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. We have no more questions on that section. We move to the business cases. Pages 2 to 11, cared for, value for money, tested social care. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. On page 11, under direct payments, it refers to recent case law that supports local authorities not having to support inflated wages. The case is the Crown against Davy. Can we have some details of that case, please?
You'll have to get that in writing.
Councillor in writing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have already asked the officers, but I'm still waiting.
Councillor Wallace, I'll make sure that is available for you.
Do we have any more questions on that section? Moving on, pages 12 to 20, cared for, new model of support for children. Do we have any questions on that section? Pages 21 to 28, fit for purpose, how we are organised. Councillor Barry? Councillor Wallace.
I have a couple of questions, but they're all in a mix with each other. On 25 to 26, reduction of officer support for complaints process, which is a £35,000. Could the member tell me what the, because there's 2 posts being reduced, what the grade of these posts are, what is the scale of the salary, and does it include the costs for such things as NI contributions in that savings?
I think that sounds like quite a technical question. I don't know if anyone wants to spend.
I thought he was going to ask the principle behind it. We'll leave down to the staff negotiations down to the particular officer. So I would only be guessing if I said the grade now, and national insurance and salary depends on how old they are or what allocations they're doing on national insurance. So I'll get the officers to reply. But it may well be there's a confidential because it's given the salaries and stuff of individuals, but we'll check.
Councillor Pickard. Councillor Barry, have you another question? Sorry, Councillor Wallace. Sorry, Councillor Wallace. I thought you had another question, sorry.
That's okay, thank you, Chairman. In this section, the cost of the civic events is referred to, page 25, towards the end of page 25. Can you tell me, please, can the officer tell me, the Cabinet member tell me, what is the cost of the remaining civic events and what those events will be, please?
Well,
the remaining events, the cost that remains in the budget after this reduction, please.
We do have those costs, but we'll reply in writing on that because we've concentrated on how we can make the reduction. We have had discussions with people who have actually been the chair of the council before, so we know what the reductions are deliverable with the total budget. We'll get that to you in writing.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 26, there's a reference to staffing reductions in box 4 of between 55 and 80 staff, for which the cost is given in the box above at £2.99 million. This is described as managers and service savings. How many managers are going to be affected by this?
The whole fallout of those particular savings will come after careful consideration of the whole structure within the council. Using the normal HR methodology, we'll be looking at the spans and the layers. We've got about 2,200 staff at the minute, and I've asked officers for a detailed report on how many of those can be classed as managers. Some are at a management grade, but are there because it's a technical nature that the job that they're in. Others are there are management because they're significantly managing a large number of people. Others are classed as manager because they may be there for a policy area, for instance, a government requirement for that level of salary that they're at. But I will get that information to the councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if I could ask also for a list of managers per service and to accompany that, and perhaps an indication of how many of these posts are vacant at present.
There's a few things there. We do an annual report where we could give the total number per grade within the council. As I said, it's difficult to, where you just clarify either a manager or the technical manager or the policy manager. We'll try and get that to you. As far as any vacancies, well, yeah, we can get the vacancy list to you. It is published on a regular basis. But a lot of the vacancies you have at the minute were being held in abeyance until we've been through this particular procedure, because it would be wrong to recruit somebody into a job that was subsequently going to be removed. So there'll be a larger number of vacancies now, pending the outcome of the budget, but we'll try and get that information to you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 28, the top of the page, the funding team restructure, just previously referred to removal of a post. Monitor the situation, and if replacement for EU funding is launched, review staffing numbers. Does that mean that this post is financed from an EU source at the moment?
Councillor Pickard, did you want to respond?
The posts that we have generally in the funding teams within the council are funded as part of any bids that we actually enter into. So some of it will be funded from existing bids that we actually have. So we're looking ahead to see, well, if those existing bids, once they run out, we need to replace them. So we're looking at how we can manoeuvre that particular department so it looks more working with other councils as well, and including any future bids. As you'll be aware, even government bids include quite an area in that to, first of all, an upfront grant to do a particular business case. For that business case, then a certain percentage is allowed for the running of that particular programme. That's how we get proposed to do it. So in this case, we're moving the restructure of the team so that one of the funding streams is missed off, and that we looked at other funding opportunities for that.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Did you have another question?
Not on this section.
Could you turn your microphone? Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Thank you. Next section's pages 29 to 36 of the business cases. People wellbeing services. Do we have any questions on that section, Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. On page 34, we've got staffing implications of a total reduction of 13.8 full-time posts. The cost given in the box above is £553,000. I wonder if that could be clarified, please. Over half of those listed under staffing implications are on the lower grades, yet the figures are working out at a salary of about 40,000. Is that the correct figure?
They may be on cost, and who would like to respond? Is that an officer's response? Do we have a response in writing on that one? Gary. Councillor Bell? No?
Not me.
Right, I think we're just going to have a response in writing on that one, Councillor Wallace. Any other questions on that section? Pages 37 to 44, maximising resources, sourcing, supply chain and commercials. Do you have any questions on that? No? Pages 45 to 51, maximising resources, deliver our fees and charges policy. Any questions on that section? Pages 52 to 57, alternative weekly collections. I think we've touched on that as well. Councillor Barry?
Could the Cabinet Lead tell me whether the 2.6% increase, as shown on page 52, per annum includes and covers the 790 properties to be built per annum up to 2032.
Councillor Sterling?
Well, like the budget, we'll have to make assumptions, and we'll have got a local plan. We're looking, and there will be more properties coming on this on stream, so there will be a growth in waste. So that's one of the reasons why we're actually looking at trying to get more recycling done, so there's not a growth into it going into landfill.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Did you have another question, Councillor Barry? Is it Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sterling, at the Cabinet meeting on the 10th of December 2012, which you've already alluded to tonight, you mentioned that we accepted a £3.355 million grant from government to keep weekly bin collections. Setting aside the budget at the time, which I've got here, the papers here, the amount we spent on capital purchases, and using your figures, which we've received tonight, the cost of keeping weekly bin collections is £318,000 per annum. Going from these figures, it looks like the council's made a surplus from the grant. So can Councillor Sterling confirm that the additional monies, or where the additional monies have been spent, and if there will be a clawback from government if they haven't been spent on bin collections?
Actually, the grant when it was given was not just for weekly bin collections. It was for recycling and stuff like that. All of the money actually has been spent. We used the last and some of that probably last year's bin collection. So it all has been spent, and so there'll be no clawback.
Can I just follow up that, Chair? Going back to that period in time, year one, the money set aside for weekly bin collections was 720,000, rising by 10,000 every year. So does the Cabinet member agree that there's a surplus on the weekly bin collections given the figures we've received tonight?
No. Actually, as I mentioned before, some of it was given to for recycling bins and things like that. There was a capital cost to putting recycling bins in that. So it wasn't just totally for weekly bin collection.
Well, I've got the breakdown here in front of me, actually, and there was 2.19 million set aside for weekly bin collections, and the rest were for buying bins and specialist vehicles. So from that figure, there's still 720,000, 730,000 and 740,000 in the first 3 years. So there would be a surplus given the figure tonight.
But it hasn't happened over 3 years, it's happened over 5 years. Since 2012, 2017, it's been 5 years. So, you know, that would cover that figure.
Did the government not extend in the previous 2 years?
Well, to be honest, last year we extended ourselves. We actually had some money left, and we used that to extend it for last year.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Any more questions, Councillor Miller? Sorry, Councillor, I think it was Councillor Hobson first, and then we've got Councillor Austin and Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. At the foot of page 53, it says there are some perceived health concerns with alternate weekly collections. What are those health risks, please?
To be honest, we've looked at the health, and there's actually no health, very little health implications, because there's councils all over the country, a lot of them run by your party, who've actually been running alternative, and actually there's one Conservative council actually running a monthly bin collection. So, you know, I think if you're looking for health implications, I think they've been well and truly tested out throughout the country with other councils, and there's been none forthcoming.
Chairman, it just says there are some perceived health concerns with alternate weekly collection. Is that wrong?
Well, I think it says perceived, Councillor.
It's as we do in all, we do a risk. It doesn't have to necessarily occur. So it was identified as a risk. Was there any health? And it's actually answered that they've been to the Chartered Institute of Waste Management for that information. So it's a possible risk, not a risk.
If you look at page 54 at the top there, A resource action programme concluded there are no direct evidence that fortnightly residual waste collections have led to any health impacts for either householders or operatives in the UK. Top of page 54, if you get a look.
I just wonder why you put it in there, that's all.
I think Councillor Hodgson, if you, sorry, if you turn your mic, I think if you read the whole script, it does ask the question, then it follows on with an answer, of explanation. Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. It's again on page 53, the paragraph just above where it says risks and considerations. It's the statement that residents are already putting their residual waste bin out every fortnight. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member how exactly you know that and how widespread this is.
Well, we have asked quite a, been doing engagement with Karen and that and quite a few. And basically, if you look around, I've had more people coming up to me and saying long before time, I wish I should have done it ages ago, because most people now on about just collecting waste. A lot of people are about saving our planet as well and sort of stopping stuff going in the landfill. And you get it with all over the place. But the thing is, the bulk of people who I have talked to haven't got a problem with it. Where there are problems, we will go out and talk to people and sort of have a word with them. And, where there's very large families, we might actually say, well, we'll try to get you a bigger recycling bin or something like that, because we want to encourage people to recycle. We don't want to have to put lots of stuff in the landfill where the gases come off and kill our own ozone layer. So really, we are looking at the green part of it, not so much the financial.
Could I just follow that? I do have another couple of questions as well on that.
Do you have another question?
Yes, another couple of questions. Regarding, again, the residual waste bins, do you have any figures? I mean, what you've said was anecdotal, that people have come up to you and said this. Are there any actual written evidence of people already putting their bins out?
I think the officers have got it, but you'll have to get that right.
Could we have copies sent to the member, please?
We'll request that from the officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have another question, Councillor?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. It's the second bullet point in the section at the bottom of page 53, which says the savings are based on reducing the amount of waste produced overall and increased recycling, which is dependent upon residents' behaviour. The savings would also, obviously increasing recycling is also dependent on residents having spare capacity in their bins. And again, anecdotally, I think a lot of people's bins are full already when they get emptied. So obviously we've heard you say that you expected 18 to 20% increase in recyclables. So what I'd like to ask was, when residents request a second recycling bin, presumably that request will be agreed. And in that case, has the extra cost in terms of additional recycling bins, the extra time that would be taken on the collection rounds, been factored into the savings that you've put forward?
It hasn't, all of them. They wouldn't be getting a second recycling bin. We'd be looking at possibly larger recycling bins if people want to recycle more. We're trying to encourage people to recycle. That's what we're about. And really, we'd be looking at larger recycling bins. But there's a lot of people who actually joined a scheme called Wash and Squash. And actually, if you squash some of the cans and stuff, the things that you can actually get more in your recycling bin anyway. But we would be going out and talking to people who had problems.
Chair, again, just to follow up on that, again, that's an unknown as to how many people will want a larger bin. I myself have two and have had for a long time. That presumably, if everyone wants their bin swapped for a larger one, is quite a cost implication. Have you any figures that you could give us on that?
Well, you heard the figures before. I just came out with them.
Sorry, we didn't.
Yes, well, I actually read them out in one of the questions before.
Is that the
to go in the landfill, it's 100.
Replacing the bins.
To go in the landfill, it's £122 a tonne. For recycling, it's 31 pence a tonne. I think if we can get people recycling more, I think the finance will actually take care of itself on the savings by not putting stuff in the landfill.
Can I just say, Chair, that doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Austin was referring to was the price of like replacing a bigger bin and a recycling bin. But I think that's an unknown quantity. We don't know how, as Mr. Councillor Sterling's said, they're going to be trying to educate people with the wash and squash. And we don't really know what's going to be happening in the future. And I think that's something that we can't answer at the moment.
So the suggestion there would be that the savings are up in the air, really, because
we don't know how much it's going to cost. The recycling. Yeah, we've just Councillor Sterling.
The cost of the recycling bins, would be more than offset by anything we saved on landfill. We're putting 12% of our stuff into landfill at this moment in time. We don't like putting 12% in, and it's costing £122 a tonne. So, for the cost of keeping 1 tonne out of landfill, we would pay for 3 recycling bins. It's like other things, it's an invest to save. It would, and that's what, all governments, particularly yourselves in the past, should have been doing years ago, but you didn't. So, basically, that's where we're coming from. But if you're saving £122 a tonne, and you're only paying 31 pence, there's enough there to cover any budget stuff for buying new bins.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you. Just going back to the grant which has fallen out, Chairman, could we have a breakdown of the costs, please? How much has been spent of that grant actually on weekly collections, and how much has been spent on the recycling, and what were the figures for each included in the base budget, please?
Well, I'm afraid I haven't got them now, and I think you'll have to. I'll see.
I was going to say that's a technical question.
That would be fine, thank you.
Councillor Hodgson?
Is page 59 in this section, or is that the next section?
Are we up to that bit? I think 59 is the next section, Councillor Hodgson. Is there any questions up to page 57? Right, we'll move on to the section you're referring to, Councillor Hodgson, pages 58 to 62, protecting environmental standards. Right, you have your question.
Yes, thank you. We've had a lot of difficulty with the weed spraying over the years, and officers have advised us that the problem is the material they're permitted to use is not really adequate for the job. But I noticed we have provided for a 4th spray this year. What is the purpose of doing that?
Well, a lot of it depends on what sort of weather you have. It was very good growing. It was very good growing weather last year, and we don't want to be caught out again this year. So really, we need to cover it, because the way the climate's been changing, and we're not getting in the cold weather, it kills off your grass for long night. We really actually got to keep ahead of the game, and that's what we're trying to do.
So it's a provision, really. Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Hodgson?
What improvements to the biodiversity have been or are being achieved?
Could you expand on that, please?
I think there needs to be more specific than, have you got a specific question?
Third bullet point on page 59, Chairman. There's a claim there made for extending biodiversity areas. I just wonder what you expect to achieve from that.
Well, what I expect to achieve with expanding the biodiversity areas is it's what the public have been asking for. We've been getting a lot of congratulations on our wildflowers and stuff like that. But it's also one of the biggest problems in this country is that we're losing our bees. And we're having to put some bee-friendly areas in where we can. Or else we'll be like China, we'll be having to go around with little pads sort of pollinating all the plants because there's no bees to do it. So I think that's why it's something we've always wanted to do. It's something we've always wanted to sort of produce what greening credentials, and I think we're doing that. Like the planting of the trees on the 20 pit heap and stuff like that is something we have done. You had the chance to do it, but you didn't. We have done it.
Councillor Hodgson, have you any further questions?
Please. On page 60, a review of grass cutting and other environmental maintenance. What has the review of grass cutting and environmental maintenance found, in your review? Has the new equipment safeguarded standards, or will there be a reduction in standards?
There'll be no reduction in standards. We, unlike Newcastle and other councils around the world, have actually stuck with the 14 grass cuts. Although, you know, but we have bought in extra machinery last year. Actually, one massive thing, it's like a tank, and it cuts all the sides of the, you know, the banks and that, the bank, and it just chews through it. And it saves 2.5 days for 2 men. The other one is we've got a new improved bowling green. I think it's what it cuts the time down. And this frees up the people who work on other parts, so it's actually keeping the bullock tidier by giving them more man hours on different bits. But the one that actually does the banks is remote control, so instead of having 2 guys with a mower and that, 1 guy's controlling, you know, so we're all bringing new machinery where it should be used.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling.
Just, Chairman,
Councillor
one final
Hodgson.
question, if I may. The risk paragraph on page 61 seems to draw attention that the public may be concerned at lowering standards. Are you saying that is wrong? They should have no worry about that?
Despite the massive cuts that this council has taken over the last few years from your government, we have not lowered our environmental standards one bit. We're getting better scores now for the environment than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever. But basically we're getting better scores for the environment. And that's through the difficulty of having to go through all of these, I don't know why you dare call them efficiencies, because they're cuts. And we're having to go through them. But by changing the way of working at times, but we're working with a bare minimum now. We're absolutely, and these people are doing a marvellous job looking after the environment. Now, we're not lowering standards in any case at all.
Chairman, just one point. It's not my government, it's our government.
I didn't vote for the men.
Okay. So, did you have a question, Councillor Wallace, or was that it then on that section? This section? No? Right, we're moving on. Pages 63 to 66, protect the cultural offer. Councillor Marion Huscroft.
Chair, I'd just like to ask the Cabinet Member for a slight clarification on with regard to reducing the library hours. It's a bit confusing in the paperwork, and earlier on Councillor Dog only mentioned daytime hours. It says here no late evenings, and the clarification was, is there going to be any evening openings, sort of early evening, or is there going to be no evening openings at all? Thank you.
It's basically closing earlier, and half days on the side. Basically, the proposed hours for the branch libraries is 19 hours a week, and the four customer service centres is 46.5 hours a week. Some of the timings will still have to be sorted out, but we'll be closing early at night time.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Did you have another question? Do we have any other questions on that section? Councillor Wallace?
Yes, on page 65, Chairman, the staffing implications with regard to the libraries is 11.88, almost 12 full-time posts. The expenditure for that, the saving, is 139,000. Is that the correct figure? What grade, what are we paying these staff?
Councillor Dark,
If you're talking about for staffing, if you're talking about the libraries, We have 14.88 posts are at risk, and one service manager, one tourism development officer, and there's 3.5 team leaders, 6 assistant librarians, and 1.9 service support librarians, and most of those will be achieved by voluntary redundancies. And the total saving in cost for that is 116,000 for staffing.
Sorry, the total is 116,000.
Sorry, no, the price rises is also bringing
He hasn't
116.
responded. Finish his response. Sorry,
Price
Councillor
rises,
Dark.
we're putting price rises in the leisure centres and all that, that's 116,000. It'll generate that. In a general increase of 3% in prices from January, and the 8th of January, there's been no complaints received. So altogether in the cultural services, there's very little reduction in staff in the sports and leisure. There's one assistant manager post, there's going to be 500 redundancies. There's 6 part-time leisure assistants at the parks being redeployed in their role, and there's 1 part-time leisure assistant, which is a divorce vacant. So total savings and job losses in the sports is 100,000, and the cultural services is 270,000.
Councillor Wallace?
What I'm looking at, Chairman, is the figures on page 65. The expenditure under the heading Financial Analysis is a saving of £139,000 in employees. Yes? The following box, staffing implications, full-time equivalents, a reduction of almost 12. So 12 full-time equivalents costs £139,000 according to the figures before us this evening. I'm querying the salary rates. If 12 full-timers cost £139,000, that presumably is the total cost to the council of pension contributions, national insurance, etc. That seems extremely low for full-time equivalents.
I think that's...
We'll get an answer.
get that answer off. Yeah, it's a technical question. Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what salaries anybody gets paid in this council, apart from the chief executive, because public.
We'll get that response in writing, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. I would expect the 12 full-time staff get more than £139,000.
Well, some of it's volunteers. I don't know what happens there. That's what it says there. But never mind. We'll get that response.
Volunteers on staff.
I've lost where I was now. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 65 again, under mitigating actions at the bottom of the page. The section that reads options for book returns at customer first centres. I just wondered if that had been costed, and if so, what that cost would be.
Again, I haven't got that figure. We'll provide that in writing.
Right, thank you. I have another couple of questions. The section that says review mobile library route to compensate for lack of fixed provision, I'm assuming means increase the mileage covered. So again, has the extra cost of fuel, any additional staff that might be needed, and further depreciation of the mobile library vehicle been factored into the budget, and if so, what's that cost?
Well, again, I would imagine that has been involved in all the costings, but I couldn't tell you what it is because I haven't had it. We'll put that in writing for you if you want.
Yeah, we'll get that response then.
Oh, sorry, thank you. The last question on page 65 again at the very bottom, review the use of libraries at home delivery service for the most vulnerable. Can I ask, what does review mean? Does it mean cut?
I suppose it won't be a rolling review. We are keeping that, I've said that, we are keeping that as it is.
As it is, so that's definitely staying as it is. So it can't really be in a mitigating action.
Well, I think they reviewed it, haven't they? And they're keeping it.
And left it the same? Right, okay.
Okay, moving on. Does anyone else got any more questions on that section? Right, the capital plan cases, pages 67 to 69, Forest Hall District shopping area improvement. Do you have any questions on that area? No. Pages 70 to 75, the A189 improvements, Haddocks Mill to Westmoor. Any questions on that? The main report continued, using the business case, pages 83 to 87, Appendix D, 1, 2018 to 2020, investment plan summary. Do you have any questions on that part of the proposal? No. Pages 86 to 96, Appendix D1, 2018-2021, prudential indicators. Any questions? Pages 97 to 112, Appendix D3, North Tyneside Council Investment Strategy, 2018 to 2021. Any questions? Pages 113 to 114, Appendix E, Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2018-19. Any questions? Pages 115, Appendix F, Budget Engagement. Sorry, Councillor, was the previous, was it this one? The previous one, this one? Yes. 115, okay, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions on this one. I'd just like to ask how many actual opportunities for face-to-face engagement there were during the engagement process, how many people attended, and where these events and opportunities were held.
I think that's already been answered, Councillor Austin.
Is it?
Because I think Councillor Barry, did you ask that question?
I wasn't aware of a number being given. There was a number.
I think the numbers were given.
There was a number given for residents panel, but I'm assuming there were more than just the residents panel involved, or maybe not.
Well, I'm sure that was given previously. But we can get the answer to you in writing, okay?
Okay.
Have you another question?
Yes, I have another 2 questions, thank you. The text on page 115 is very much generalised, much more so than in recent years. There are no figures regarding the levels of support or indeed objection to Cabinet's proposals. I just wondered if the Cabinet member could tell us what these levels of support or objection were, rather than just generalisations.
Councillor Burgess, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, I can only respond to any of the concerns that we've received. I can't, and I don't want to best guess any of the information that we didn't receive. But of the 3 of the residents' panel meetings that we've had, the information that I've received is that we've had positive engagement. Quite clearly, throughout that process, the residents have been more interested in the future provision of the library service, which we've already alluded to, but that was really down because there was no closures planned. Many of them were shown an interest in being more involved in the service, which is a very positive outcome from that, whilst it could have been a negative, but they hadn't gotten the right information. And again, with the weekly bin collections, on that one, the only negative, well, we didn't have a negative on that, that was welcomed, especially in terms of our residents who are wanting and urging neighbours and friends and family to continue with more recycling.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just come back on that response? Again, the Cabinet member referred to 3 meetings of the residents' panel. Was that it? Was that the engagement?
No.
There was, I'm assuming, other events.
Our engagement it was quite extensive. I mean, as always, we start with the big community conversations, which start in the summer up to September, and they go out throughout the borough. And the questions and comments and discussions that our engagement team have with our residents are about the council plan and how we shape the future of North Tyneside Council. So that was one of them. We have got the online survey, which is continuous, and that's on the website. Obviously, I did mention the 3 residents panel. We do have our social media. There is extensive, I mean, we are widely promoting the opportunity to take part, our residents to take part in the budget engagement process, and it's continuous. There are lots of different things, and you know, like we continue to try that. I mean, the website, the Facebook, 17,300 reaches via Facebook, so it is quite extensive. It's not always what we want to hear on some of the comments and remarks, but it is engagement, and we learn from what our residents are engaging with us and telling us, and that's how we shape our budget, and that's part of the budget proposal.
Thank you for that response. It's just a shame that there don't seem to be, again, it's all very much anecdotal. There don't seem, there isn't, it will become a question in good time. Very anecdotal, and you know, is there any written evidence in the past? You know, we've had comment slips, things like that for people. We have been given no evidence of what the residents said other than your view of what you wanted them to say.
Can I just ask, Councillor Austin, are you wanting figures of who attended, or is that what the kind of thing you're wanting, or do you want responses? Is that what you want? Because I think they've got people. I know the engagement. I know the engagement. They have lists of people who actually go and attend because they get attendance lists. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
But in order to shape
I think
budget, you have to know what people have said about it rather than just anecdotally. Anyway.
I think there's said there's been 17,000 responses. I think if you're wanting further clarification, we can get that to you. But I think we can't know whether. We'll get those figures, but I think at the moment we just got to leave.
Can I just clarify that it wasn't 17,000 responses? I don't think it was 17,000 people looking at the Facebook page, not responding to it. They could be anywhere in the world. If I can
Chair, I don't think there would be a problem getting that information, because, like I say, it gives us the basis on forming and engaging with the Cabinet for us to shape what the cuts should be. And I have to say cuts, and we are in this situation because of central government, whilst it might not be your government, it's central government. And I just really think that information can be had. I think it also, on Appendix F, there's a lot of information in there, whilst it hasn't got the nitty-gritty figures that I've already repeated several times. I mean, because there's comments coming through on Twitter, so that's good as well. But as every year, as I say to yourselves, on the opposite side, I'm really urging you, if you've got any new ideas on engagement, how we do it out there with the general public, then please share them with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. I had one last question, if I may. Just given that the business case has remained on pink paper until very recently, does the Cabinet member believe that residents have had a fair opportunity to consider the detail of their proposals?
The budget consultation went out in the format it has done in the past. We have to talk in general terms. I think I can give you without being criticised, 100% return saying there shouldn't be any cuts from the government. But as far as that, they are pink paper, and the reason they're there for is because the detail then has to be considered. And considered through the budget working groups and through the overview scrutiny working group, and then they're published before they come to council here. I'm sure they've had a lot more time than we'll have from 4 o'clock for 2 weeks today before they'll actually see your proposals as well. So the reason they're on pink paper is because that's what the council procedure said. The consultation, as you're well aware, is done on the overall context of what are the services we need to protect, what are the likely outcomes of the government cuts, and how they would then affect the people of North Tyneside.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Do you have any more questions, Councillor Austin? Councillor Frank Lott.
Sorry, Chair, it was just a point of order because we seem to have gone into very fine detail about the nature of the engagement that this administration has gone to, particularly when compared with a statement from the opposite party when they were in power that they'd based their budget on the views of people that they'd listened to and had been knocking on during the local election campaign. So I think that ours is a much more intensified level of engagement than they based their budget on.
Is this a question? Can I ask, is that a question, Councillor?
No, Chair, it was just...
Right, okay, thank you. Have we... Pages 116 to page 121, Appendix G, Reserves and Balances Policy. Do you have any questions on that section? No? Pages 122, just page 122. Anyone on that one? Page 123 to 129, Appendix 1, Glossary of Terms. Pages 130 to 149, Appendix J, Overview, Scrutiny and Policy Development, Committee Budget Subgroup Report. No? Pages 150 to 152, Addendum Report, Response to the Overview, Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee Recommendations. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Reference is made in this section to the weekly bins and the libraries. We will be proposing to keep the libraries open as currently and maintaining weekly collections as well as freezing council tax. Will the Cabinet members support us?
Well, I don't think that was a question. Is it a question? Because it's a statement.
I was asking
supporting the
support our and the libraries and the waste collection has been referred to. We will be proposing to keep the libraries open as currently and to retain the weekly bin collections as well as freezing the council tax, and I'm asking the Cabinet member if he will support us.
As one of the cabinet members, we don't know until we see the budget that you actually put forward. You mentioned before the pink pages of you it. Let's see what your budget is. Let's move it forward. You were given the opportunity to support us when we're going to get extra resources for North Tyneside and you refused. So we look forward to how you're going to deal with even less.
Councillor Rankin.
Sorry, Chair, it was just a bit of clarification. I didn't hear what Councillor Wallace said there. Did she say she wanted to keep open the libraries that she would have shut 4 years ago?
I said keep the libraries open as currently, Chairman.
I didn't realise she was on the executive, so we'll answer for the executive. I think Councillor Rankin may be correct that there may be a bit of a hypocrisy creeped in there.
Are there any final questions which do not relate to any specific pages appearing on tonight's papers? Do we have any final questions? No? Right, well, the meeting is adjourned until the 15th of February. Can I remind members... hang on. Hang on. Right, the meeting is now adjourned until the 15th of February. Can I remind members to ensure they bring all the papers that they have considered tonight with them for the next meeting. As I said earlier, members are able to submit objections to the proposals to the Mayor and the Cabinet up to 4 p.m. on Wednesday the 14th of February. Any objections received will be considered at the reconvened Council meeting on the 15th of February. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.